We're here now in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, CNBC's headquarters, but earlier you were at the New York Stock Exchange in Manhattan, where SEC Chair Paul Atkins rang the opening bell. He also facilitated a meeting and you participated in that meeting. What was the big takeaway for you?
Well, it was a privilege to join Chairman Atkins and other corporate leaders to talk about how to make the IPO process and the process for life as a public company more efficient, more effective, better for investors and better for companies. The chairman laid out a very strong vision for reforms that he thinks will improve the process for all concerned, and it was a delight to not only listen to his remarks but share our views on ways that tokenization and other elements of digital assets and crypto can help with that.
Speaking with CNBC Squawk Box, SEC Chair Paul Atkins said the agency is on track to allow for innovation exemptions for crypto activities sometime next month, it's looking like. What are you hoping to see there?
Well, what's exciting is that we have an SEC chairman and broader SEC leadership that is really focused on how do we bring more Americans into the public markets. And we do think that crypto can offer some important solutions to the problems that have plagued the system for too long. Fortunately, the SEC has long had pathways for companies under Regulation A, under the crowdfunding rules that allow for less mature, more innovative companies to offer access to equity in their firms through these exemptions and other forms of registration without bearing the full costs of life as a public company. We think we can leverage those available pathways, but improve them through tokenization and other efforts involving crypto that will lower the cost of life as a public company and allow companies to develop the muscle and skill to thrive in the public forum. It was a real delight, honestly, to hear the chairman focus his very limited and precious time on these topics. And I think the reception that we heard in the room and hopefully far beyond it suggests he's going to succeed.
Now, as we mentioned, you're actually here in the tri-state area now, but you're heading to DC, where you're going to be meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill to discuss crypto regulations, specifically crypto market structure, which is a big priority for Coinbase, as we discussed in several of our prior conversations. So, you know, a lot of people in the industry were hoping that we would see advancements for crypto market structure by the end of the year, but then we saw the longest government shutdown in history. So what happens next?
Well, market structure legislation is a big priority for Coinbase. It's a big priority for the crypto industry as a whole. And it really is important for Congress to finish the job that started earlier this year when it passed historic stablecoin legislation. That's something we refer to as the Genius Act. I'm hopeful that the last 10% that remains in dispute and in discussion can be resolved because we have done 90% of the hard work. We're very close to getting a consensus on a bipartisan basis on basic rules for crypto that have long been overdue.
Now, there are reports that a markup session on a bipartisan crypto market structure bill will take place either next week or the week after. Do you have any insight there?
I do. It's very clear that Democrats and Republicans on both the Banking Committee as well as the Agriculture Committee have been working hard in the Senate to, again, find areas of commonality and address areas where they may still disagree. I give a lot of credit to Senate Ag Chairman Bozeman as well as Senator Cory Booker for serving as real strong leadership on the issues that are of greatest concern and interest to each of their respective caucuses. And we think that the markup that will come in the next, hopefully, few days will reflect the consensus that they've been able to forge and provide a vehicle and a mechanism for resolving any outstanding questions that have not yet been resolved. The good news is on the basic question of what is a digital asset security? How do we distinguish securities from commodities? What's the appropriate authority of the Securities and Exchange Commission as opposed to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission? There is a bipartisan consensus emerging, and we do see commonality that we think will carry this bill forward, hopefully all the way to the president's desk for signature.
So last month, the Senate Agriculture Committee released its part of a draft of crypto market structure, a bill for crypto market structure. In it, the text calls for the CFTC to have more regulatory authority over crypto. Absent from the text, any clear guidelines really related to DeFi protections. Did you read that draft, and what was your take on it?
Well, the draft that was released most recently certainly had some blank space that remained that the committee in particular would have to work to fill. DeFi is a critically important topic. Coinbase and others in crypto have been focused on protecting DeFi and making sure that this important innovation, even within the broader innovations of crypto, is protected. It's a position for Coinbase that, frankly, we've held for some time and put great resources to defend. In our now, I think, well understood litigation with the SEC going back a couple of years, we were perhaps most proud that we were able to secure a victory in that case protecting DeFi wallets. And we think that the language that will be hammered out in the pending bill should and almost certainly will protect DeFi so that, again, innovators in this space can continue to operate, room to operate and freedom to develop all the important technologies that we need.
So you're meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and I'm just wondering, what's on the agenda? What are you hoping to achieve during these discussions in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think it's important that lawmakers understand that the 52 million Americans who have owned a digital asset at this point in time are expecting them to act. It can be tempting, particularly late in the year, and with all the progress that we've made to date on crypto, to push aside the progress that we've made and defer the last remaining decisions, that last 10%, until the next session into the new year. That I don't think will satisfy those 52 million Americans, and we want to remind lawmakers that not only do those who have owned digital assets expect this legislation, those who have concerns about crypto also want to see legislation. Certainly the president's made it very clear he expects to see legislation on his desk to sign, and we think we can work with them to get them over those last few hurdles and get something ready for the president's signature immediately.
So you say immediately, but as we are in fact approaching the end of 2025, it seems more and more unlikely that will happen before the end of the year. What's your outlook for crypto regulation in 2026, especially as the new year approaches, and especially as the midterms are approaching?
Well, whether we are able to actually get text enacted into law before the end of this calendar year, or it perhaps may slip a few weeks or a few months into the next year, it's important that the momentum that we've been able to garner up until this point not be lost. There's no question that as the next set of elections comes closer and closer, politics is always not far from people's minds, and that can create additional burdens and hurdles. But crypto is a unique technology and unique industry in many ways. Perhaps the way in which it's unique that I'm most proud of is that it has largely remained a bipartisan issue. And so even as Democrats and Republicans have struggled to find common ground on well, just about anything else, they have worked together to get crypto legislation passed. We saw that with the Genius Act. We saw that in the House when 78 Democrats joined almost every Republican to pass the Clarity Act, a form of market structure legislation in that body. And so I'm confident that even as the politics will grow more intense as we turn to 2026, the focus on getting market structure legislation passed in the Senate will not be lost.
Now, you mentioned the Genius Act earlier. Last time you and I spoke in person, you actually launched a marketing campaign against the bank's efforts to undo provisions of the Genius Act. Some banks were taking issue with stablecoin rewards. So what's the latest there?
Well, it's confusing, to put it gently, why certain traditional financial institutions, including banks, are now suggesting that we re-litigate old issues that were resolved by the Genius Act. And what I'm referring to is the fact that the Genius Act made very clear that third-party distributors of stablecoins, including Coinbase, but not limited to Coinbase, have every right to offer rewards to our customers that share the economic benefits of stablecoins with the people that hold them. It's also confusing that even as certain traditional financial institutions claim that that issue has not been resolved in the Genius Act and therefore requires further legislation, they're submitting comments to the Treasury Department that is in the middle of rulemaking on this issue, claiming exactly the opposite. And so we think it's just very straightforward and important that the law Congress passed earlier this year be honored, that rewards be protected, and that we not get distracted by these sideshows even as we move forward on the other important elements of market structure legislation that remain to be enacted.
So what happens next in that regard? Do you think there is a chance that those provisions could be undone?
Well, I think there's almost certainly no chance that Congress would undo the hard work that it did just a few months ago. And we think it's critically important that that legislation be allowed to come into the fore, and that the rulemaking that was authorized, indeed required by the Genius Act, be allowed to go forward.
So Coinbase just released its transparency report. You took to X to point out some of the highlights, including the fact that Coinbase received around 13,000 requests from law enforcement, and that Coinbase works with law enforcement to ensure that crypto is in fact safe. So what are some of the highlights? Take us through some of the other highlights in this report.
Well, the transparency report that you're referring to, Talia, is something that Coinbase has issued now for a number of years. And most recently, just last week, in fact, we made clear that once again, Coinbase is continuing to partner appropriately with law enforcement when we are served with proper legal process. You know, these legal orders that we receive from law enforcement agencies here in the United States and in fact all over the world compel Coinbase to produce certain information regarding our accounts and customers and the like when there is a legitimate lawful basis for the government to request that we do so. The volume that we've seen of these requests continues only to go up. It's interesting that of the 13,000 or so requests that we received in the most recent period, more than half came from outside the United States. And so we're seeing increasing interest on the part of international jurisdictions in availing themselves of lawful process to request this information. Coinbase will always protect our customers' interests. We will always challenge overbroad or unwarranted requests. We also believe in being a good, solid partner to law enforcement here in the United States and all over the world. And we think it's important that responsible companies show that partnership and demonstrate that partnership, because the fact of the matter is there are legitimate concerns regarding nefarious activity that arise from time to time. And we believe that under this current framework, companies like Coinbase can honor their commitments.
Do you have an example of how Coinbase was integral in helping law enforcement cut down on crypto crime, for example, here or in other regions around the world?
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that we recently were able to partner with law enforcement, again, exercising appropriate lawful process to break up a ring financing fentanyl distribution. And what I think is unfortunate sometimes is that these cooperative efforts often can't be shared because of necessity confidentiality concerns. But where we can demonstrate our commitment to law enforcement and show that responsible actors are not only willing but indeed committed to partnering with law enforcement, we believe we need to do that.
You're heading to DC, and Coinbase is actually planning to launch a new product this month. There's a lot of speculation. It might be a prediction market. Are you planning to discuss prediction markets there on Capitol Hill while you're there? And are you able to confirm that this could potentially happen?
Well, I leave it to our product leadership to speak to any future product roadmaps and plans. But what I can say is that prediction markets are certainly a hot topic right now, not only in Washington, but all across the country, as this new form of engaging with event contracts is taking root and capturing the imagination of Americans in all topics, and with respect to all subjects. What I can say is that the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and other federal agencies, I think, are working hard to grapple with these issues. And you know, as a company and as an industry that has dedicated its resources to working with lawmakers to understand how existing statutes apply to new technologies, new products, new services, and where there may be a need for additional legislation or new rulemaking, Coinbase has always been willing and in fact eager to offer its point of view, and will continue to do that.
Final thought before I let you go, what can people expect from Coinbase in the new year?
Well, hopefully a celebration of new market structure legislation that will have just passed. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that with legislation, we will only be able then to turn to additional issues that are going to require action by Congress or at least the regulators, whether it's tax policy, which still needs to be addressed by Congress, whether it's resolving or addressing outstanding issues regarding anti-money laundering or know your customer rules, the application of the Bank Secrecy Act. There are a whole host of additional topics in crypto that are going to require our attention and engagement. And fortunately, my team and I, we're up for it.
It certainly will be very interesting to see what happens. Paul Grewal, Chief Legal Officer with Coinbase, thank you very much for sitting down with us.
Thank you, Talia.